Good morning, everybody. This is Martin John, and I'm here to present Tao of the Day. The Tao of the Day, for those of you who may not know, is a show I've been producing for a couple years now. Sipping my kombucha as I do in the morning. Where I come in and talk with you about the Tao Te Ching. So, the Tao Te Ching is an ancient text written about 600 BCE, and it consists of 81 short chapters or verses, or it's hard to say what they are. They're just, I suppose they're chapters. They just offer an insight on how to live a more reasonable life. Now, the Tao has been translated in all sorts of the Tao Te Ching translates to the way, of course, and that means the way of nature, right? It is talking about this is the natural order of all things. Now, this was written 600 BCE, so this was written well before a time of our modern understanding of the world and science and all of these things, and that's what gives it so much power in the world today, because we have short-sightedly gotten rid of lots of information, short-sightedly gotten rid of the variety of things life had to offer, and what we're left with is just what is good for the economy. And when we only look at what is good for the economy, and so many people that have power within our economy, they're the ones that get to dictate how individuals see the world, right? So if you own a media company and the media that you put out tells people the way to live a good life is to be productive in the economic fashion, right? To have money, or to start businesses, or to engage in all of these things that kind of turn dollars. Well, if that's the message that's going out, and what is success and what is failure, and what is good and what is bad, and when people who have a lot of a lot to lose or a lot to gain in pushing that message, well, then we all start thinking that that's right. And when they have cute slogans, and when they have, like, you're either with us or against us, and they have these arguments that can't be argued, well, then we all get caught up in this way of living. And that's rather unfortunate, because there are so many ways of living and ways of being that are not going to be ever promoted by anybody, because they don't have any value outside of the individual that's engaging it. Stillness is one of those things. If you have a desire to accomplish, quote unquote, anything in the physical world, well, stillness doesn't have a whole lot of value. And yet, stillness is such an important aspect of living. And if you don't engage stillness, and the Tao talks about this, and I'll find the, because it's a verse entitled Stillness and Integration, and if I can find it, there it is, number 16. So in number 16, it says, if you can't find It allows integration. What is it? If stillness and integration cannot be achieved, and integration just means integrating that which is learned through action, right? So there's stillness and there's action. And if stillness and integration cannot be achieved, constant action will lead to anxiety and wild movements. And if we look out at the world today, at the amount of people that, claim to have diagnoses that include anxiety, well, we start to really understand that maybe stillness is a thing that we need to really start having as a part of our lives, right? When I was a kid, not doing was akin to laziness. So if I wasn't in action, I was lazy. And that very well could have been a lesson that my parents learned. So, and if they were to believe it, they would judge themselves about being still. Then they would see me, they would judge me because they didn't want to judge themselves about the stillness. And it would be a cycle that they would push on me. Then I would have to get into these states of anxiety and wild movements as well, because I would never have the space in my life to be still. Even today, when I try and be still, I always think, well, what could I be doing? And it takes some work to just be still, and oftentimes when we're still and we can't handle it, we'll turn on the TV, we'll turn on something to consume. And that's not stillness. And that's what this is talking about when it says, like, if stillness and integration cannot be achieved, it's not just stillness. It's stillness and integration. If you want to integrate that which is learned through action, you need to be still, but not just still. Still in a way that allows integration so that you can mature. Like earlier in this verse, it says, I'll read this verse. I'll just go over 16 today, I suppose. Stillness and Integration is the title. Being empty of mind is of the utmost importance. And I'm going to stop right there and just say being empty of mind is of the utmost importance, and it is to be guarded with fervor. Here's the thing. Your mind needs to be empty. If your mind has anything in it, when you step into any new situation from moment to moment, if you step into the next moment with a mind full of thoughts from the last moment, you are not here in this moment, right? You are actually broken up. You're not able to be here. You are also not where you were. And yet you are carrying all of this baggage from moment to moment, from linearly forward in your life. We have all seen states of action arise, and always beyond it returns stillness. So when you get inspired to do something, you wake up and you're like, oh, this is great. I have purpose, right? I have purpose every morning. I wake up and I do, right? I have these things I want to do, these things I end up doing. This, for my mom, it's like, it might be, as she's getting older and stuff, and she doesn't live like a big, full, fulfilled life. I mean, she does what she does, but it could very well be that, because today is a day of shopping, right? She'll go and buy her groceries and the things that she needs, and then she'll come home and there's action. And then she comes home, puts the dishes away, does all of that kind of stuff, makes a little snack, sits down, watches TV, and then finds stillness. Now, is that stillness that will include integration? I'll argue maybe not, because she's utilizing that stillness to read a book, to watch a show, to listen to something, to, whatever. She's filling that time. Is that actual stillness? Arguable. But after any action arises, stillness is the natural thing to return from it. When any state of action is complete, it naturally returns to stillness. Right? Now, that doesn't mean that you are going to return to stillness, but that action arose and that action then yielded to stillness. That stillness is then what is present. Now, you can go ahead and fill your life with whatever you want to fill yourself with without noticing or pausing to be in that stillness. But stillness exists for that action nonetheless. It allows, if you were to allow it to do this completely, it allows integration of what arose from action, right? It allows something to integrate. It allows you to recognize the action that was taken, think about it, or be present with it, or allow your body to sort through the fact that action had taken place. Allow your body to follow its natural order so that it can grow and it can mature. And the next line is, which is the natural cycle of maturation. Excuse me. The natural cycle of maturation. So this is the natural cycle of maturing. Action, stillness. Action, stillness. Back and forth. Always. Right. So you'll find an area of stillness, and oftentimes, and maybe many of you have experienced this already, you'd have a state of stillness, and then that state of stillness causes you to be a little uncomfortable. That discomfort causes you to take action. That action then yields to stillness, which, then maybe it's action, stillness, action, stillness, action, stillness, until such a time where action takes hold once again, and you do a deep action-based sort of living, and then all of a sudden stillness. And this is where, postpartum depression and other things like that set in, because it's like there's action of building a body and building a human being in your body, and then you give birth to that body, and there's stillness, and the body doesn't know how to be still. And so you fill it with all of the books and all of the things and all of the stuff around child rearing, which is a natural thing. It's natural to child rear, but you need stillness in order to do that properly. Otherwise, what you're doing is measuring yourself against others. What's right, what's wrong, and those things don't exist in child rearing, because you're rearing a child. This is a human being. This is a person of their own. And there's nothing you can do that's right or wrong for that child. That child is going to have the experience that it has. Now, of course, you could go out of your way to be mean, but that's you taking control. It's not about control. If you guys can surrender to life as it is, you wouldn't need control. You wouldn't need to be right. You wouldn't need to be wrong. You wouldn't have any sort of delineation or desire for anything to be in any way. So then we have the final verse, which is where the final section of this verse, I guess, I don't know, the final group of lines. If stillness and integration cannot be achieved. Okay, so this is in your life. If stillness and integration cannot be achieved, because action is always going to be a thing, right? Action will be achieved no matter what. Even being still is possibly a form of action if you intend to do it. If you intend to be still, well, that's action. Now, can you yield that action to a stillness that is not action? That is a time for integration rather than observation. A time of integration rather than observation. A time of integration rather than action. Rather than being like, I am going to meditate. Allow your body to integrate what came up during meditation. That's a completely different thing. That's stillness. It's not meditation. Meditation isn't stillness necessarily. Meditation is an action. So we have to look at it that way, right? So if stillness and integration cannot be achieved, constant action will lead to anxiety and wild movements. So it leads to this idea that like it leads you to a space of being anxious. It leads you to a space of making wild movements. That means, you're making actions, you're taking actions that are simply being taken from a space of from a wild space. It's not penned in, it's not held, it's just wild. And that wild nature of things, those movements that are wild, like you'd be like, oh, I'm going to just try this, right? I'm going to try and, throw a monkey wrench in the works, or I'm going to do something like, and it's coming from your mind. It's not coming from you. So then it continues to say, yielding to stillness makes one impartial. That's the thing. When you're making wild movements and you're having anxiety, you're not impartial. You want something. You want something to happen. You want something to be achieved. You want to take credit for something. You have a desire. And that's what constant action, in order to have, like, you wouldn't be able to be in action constantly unless you wanted something. So you're not being impartial. Yielding to stillness makes one impartial, and all particular things fall away. Then, when it is time to die, one can be impartial to that as well. And that might be scary for some of you, but really, being impartial to everything, being impartial to your life and the lives of others, and what's happening around you. I know I have partial things. Like, I was exercising this morning already, and I was in my garage, and I was thinking, oh, did I hear something? I don't want animals in the roof of my garage. That's being partial. Like, I have a desire for something. I had to be able to try and let that go, continue with my workout without worrying about it. Because if it's going to happen, it's going to happen, and it's going to be for me to deal with, me to experience. I'm going to bring Julie up, and we're gonna chat a little bit about the Tao.
Morning.
Good morning, love. It's still morning out by you,
Only
right?
just.
11:30.
Ooh, it's close.
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to you, and as I was listening to you, for me, I could hear the guidance from an anxious state to calm. That's what I was hearing in the words that you were saying. So, when we are in action, sometimes it's not even physical, it's involving ourselves in the experience by thought even.
Mm-hmm.
So
So it might
sometimes,
appear on
yeah,
the external to be that you're still,
yeah,
and
but
yet
you're not.
you're not, right?
Because your body is still in action, because that's
Or
what
your
your body
mind.
does. Yeah, or your mind, the both of them together come
Yeah.
into action. They're still working to give you that feeling. So they're still working physically, and they're still in action. So you've not yet kind of disengaged with it. By
Right.
the thought, you're still not disengaged with what you hope the outcome will be, what you're wanting or desiring the outcome to be. So I think sometimes realising that the outcome is going to be what it's going to be, whether you desire it or not, is where you sit back then and allow.
Yeah, and that's where this like impartiality comes from, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I want to be impartial to the results of this.
Except for the
I
football yesterday. When I was talking to you, I forgot to say to you, well done for your football team. Doing a really good on scoring 4-2. Hold it in the end.
Yeah, no, yeah, I watched the highlights because I'm still debating on whether or not I want to get a streaming package through Hull, because they do their own thing now, and I have done that in the past, but on Saturdays I'm usually hanging out with a friend of mine, And so I'm always like, do I want to do this? Because it's like, like, am I going to be able to
Then you've got to
engage?
action it. Yeah.
Right.
You've got to
And
action it.
so,
And I think you would like to be more impartial.
yeah. But no, we did. Yeah, it was a nice, it was nice after, it was a good second game. Like, we'll see. First game we lost, like right at the death, and then we had the Carabao Cup, I think it was, or the FA Cup, and we're out of that, so that's always nice. Like, there is
Yeah.
something nice about being out of a cup,
Yeah.
just to take some pressure off
And
the
enjoy the
squad.
game.
Yeah, take
For
some
nothing
pressure off the
other.
squad. We're not going to be, it's sticking fast enough down there at the championships.
Yeah. Do you want the number?
Mm-hmm.
17.
What's that?
17.
17. That was right after 16, which we just read. So
Hey, that's cool. I didn't know that, actually.
Yeah.
That's kind of good, isn't
and
it?
I know you like that. So of masters and leaders. So we just read about stillness and integration, right? We just read about this idea of like wild movements and impartiality. And now we start this of masters and leaders. In the time of the great masters, there were no leaders. Then those whom the people loved led the way. After having created the position, the people feared their leaders. Then they despised them. Having created leaders, their faith in Tao was diminished. Having become a leader, his trust in the people was diminished. When there are great masters, there are no leaders. She works day and night and says nothing about it. When the work is done, the people say, amazing. We did it all by ourselves.
I love that. That's one of my favourites as well.
Yeah, I do like this
It
one.
is nice. And you're so right, that when you delegate a leader, all of a sudden that leader you start to question. You start to question authority. We all do it all of the time.
Yeah.
We kind of want authority because we want some kind of structure. But then when the structure is in place, we spend all of our time trying to battle it. So strange.
There is this interesting sort of paradox that I kind of experienced, just in an observation and even in my life, where it's like, I will expend amazing amounts of energy not following orders. or trying to get around something. Or I watch children do this. They will spend, hours or days
Scoping.
skirting something and making up excuses and finding all of these and arguing and temper tantruming and doing all of this when really all
Sounds
they
like
had
me.
to do was suck it up for 10 minutes
Sounds
and
like me.
do something.
Yeah.
And this is because there is this sense of loss of freedom.
Yeah. Definitely sounds like me.
Yeah. But like without something to anchor to, people can often feel lost.
Yeah.
Really fast. I really have enjoyed the moments in my life where I've had nothing to ground to, like no job, no income for the foreseeable future, no.
Talking my life again, Martin John.
Like there's nothing to ground to, and I have found those moments being literally the most
Freeing
productive and freeing.
and creative. Yeah.
Right. Because I'm the only one that can dictate it. Now, those moments are scary as fuck because there is nobody telling you there's a right answer. And that's what we want so so much. We do want to have the answer. We want to have, like, how am I going to end this?
How
Because
am I
there are
doing?
moments. What's that?
How am I doing? It's always the question. How am I doing? It seems to be the answer that I'm always wanting to glean. How
Yeah.
am I doing? Am I doing okay? And that's it for me, really, when I'm in those
Yeah.
moments. But and there's another part of me. It's like I'm multifaceted because I tend to answer myself. Say, you don't need to know how you're doing. Just
Hmm.
do.
Hmm.
Just do. That's it. And then don't do.
Well, I mean, there have been, because I had this, like, flare up of my MS, like, that question, how am I doing?
Yeah.
Meaning, how is the sensation that I received because of this going? And someone asked me, well, how's your arm? And I was like, I don't know. I didn't check. And I could hear them thinking, well, check. And I wasn't going to do it. I had no desire to do it. I had no, like, there's no reason for me to do it.
Yeah.
There's no reason for me to check to see, because if it's better, great. If it's not, so what? It's the
Yeah.
way it is, and I'm dealing with it. And it's
Yeah.
not, and it's obviously
It's like a
not
Schrodinger's cat, isn't it?
right. And it's not, there's absolutely no reason for me to actually check, to actually, like, do the measuring.
Yeah.
And that's where, like, having created leaders, their faith in Tao was diminished. Once you create leaders, once you create a measuring system of how you're doing, you are
Yeah.
losing faith in you. You're
In
losing
Tao.
faith in
Yes.
Tao.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I agree with that. Totally. It's a
And then,
struggle every day.
right.
But I always come back to it, which is great.
And the
Always come
other
back to it.
and the other person in all of this is the leader. Having become a leader, their trust in the people was diminished, because
That's
now
right.
they're the ones that have to dictate, and now they're like, oh, everybody needs me to answer their questions, right? Like their grounding and their sort of lives have now been like, although in
They've
the
been given a role almost. They've been
right.
given a role that they are now expected to play.
And
It
even
may,
if
they may
they
not even.
thought they wanted it,
Yeah, 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 absolutely. Yeah.
there is a point where it's like, okay, come on now.
Really?
Like, right? Like, one, I'm only human,
Yeah.
right? And that's something that a lot of people, like, if I think of, like, the old gang here in the United States, like Rumsfeld and Cheney, and I'm sure you know those names, but
I don't know them.
you don't. Okay,
No.
they were, like, they headed up the, like, FBI and all of these things, and they were, like, vice presidents and advisors to presidents and all of this kind of
Yeah.
gobbledygook, and they are they were people that were in charge of the government, like, murdering
Yes. Yeah,
individuals,
they're the guys behind the face.
right?
Yeah.
And a lot of that had to do with, like, like screwing, like, citizens, like,
Yeah.
and what have you. And when we think about that, we can think about, like, people who are like, yeah, that would be a great role to play, but then, like, when you get in that role, like, you have to sell yourself, you have to sell your soul, like,
Yes.
to
Me and
something.
Lisa and Bear and Brad last night were talking exactly about this.
Hmm.
Exactly about this. Is you sell your humanness
Right.
to achieve that. You
Yeah.
no longer have soul,
and
in a
and
sense. Yeah.
and although you might feel emboldened by that through your life, as you approach death, there's going to be a price to pay,
Yeah.
you know
Absolutely. Yeah.
and leaders, having lost their faith in the people, are literally doing that. They don't have faith in the people. They hurt the people. They make decisions that are not in the best interests of the people.
Yeah.
And then, this one wraps up with these last four lines: when there are great masters, there are no leaders. And the fact that we've made so many leaders, right? We have business leaders, we have political leaders, we have gurus, we have this, we have that, we have
Yeah, I
all of these
know.
things,
Yeah, it rubs me, that does. I
you
just
know.
think, why? The only
Right,
person that can do this is you. You don't
right.
need anyone else. You're in exactly the right place, exactly
Yeah.
the right time. That's
And
it. And whatever's happening is happening. That's it.
but then we have to look at that against number 16, which was stillness and integration.
Yeah.
Can you be still and integrate enough of what your action is giving you that you can mature and learn and
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and
Probably
realize
maturity.
well, mature in the way of understanding that you don't need
Okay.
a leader,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Maturing to a place where everything becomes impartial. You're not looking for an answer. You're
Yeah.
allowing it to be impartial.
Yeah.
And that's when there is a great master, there are no leaders. She works all day and night and says nothing about it. Why? Because she's impartial. When the work is done, people say, amazing. We did it all by ourselves.
Yeah, I like that.
And my timer cut you out again. So if you can pop back up, you pop back up so fast. I know that I think you go to the next one and back. So.
I don't mess about, Martin John. I'm an action woman.
Yeah.
I'm only kidding. But yeah, that space for me in descriptive terms is just just being in a moment, and just, in that moment, just accepting all that is, really.
Yeah.
And if you feel that you work all day and all night, and you say nothing, and the people think they've done it themselves, that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful thing. That's just, for me, that is what we strive to create, is that the people do it all by themselves.
Right. We just let them alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like there isn't this
Excuse me.
idea that like you're doing something.
Yeah, yeah.
So many people, so many, of these like coaches and teachers and authorities and individuals and, all of this stuff. It's just like, it's not, it's, and I was talking earlier when I started this talk about, action and integration. And the reason that I started talking about that is because of this idea of like, you think your actions are doing things, but it's your integration that's doing the thing. It
Yeah.
isn't the action. The action is just the lesson. What you do with that lesson happens during the integration stage. And that's you. Like, when you take action and then take clients and do all of this stuff, not you personally, I mean, maybe you as well, once
Yeah,
you,
yeah, I know.
eventually.
We'll see.
Yeah. But, once you start doing that, like the integration of like, what is it you have to learn? Like, anytime I talk to
Absolutely.
anybody, I
Yes.
realize that yes, I am going to be here present with this person, but there is integration that has to happen with me on the other side of that.
Yeah, I call it congruency. It's my favourite word at the moment.
That's a good word.
Congruency is just the most beautiful thing. If I can have that with every interaction that I have, I will be the most relaxed, pleasant person. For me, I would
Yeah.
enjoy. And that's the thing, is every interaction that you do have, there's something there for you. It's a beautiful word called insight.
Yeah.
So insight, when you're talking to somebody, or your life coaching or whatever you're doing, when you're the person that's come to see you, when they've come and they gain insight, you gain insight about their insight. It's there for you every single step of the way, everything that you're doing. If you can have congruency, you too grow.
Right.
It's there for you. That's the reason you're doing it. If you chop to the chase of it all, you'd realise that everything that you do, you are really doing for you to gain. that insight. It's
Right.
not about someone else. It's about you and your growth. And, so many people that, are kind of, I've experienced when they're talking and things, it's almost as if they are in a place of a higher, solved, totally untouchable place, and they're reaching down to the person they're trying. That's no good.
Yeah, there's a model that's been made here in the United States. I don't know, it's last 20 years or whatever, where it's just like, I'm gonna meet you where you're at.
That's the one. Come and sit with me.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, fuck all. Like, if you sat down with the Dalai Lama and you were gonna meet him where he's at, like, what
Yeah,
does that look like for you?
exactly. I'd be like, do you know what I would say to him? If I met the Dalai Lama, I'd say, "You look like my grandma," because he does. That's what I would say. But the thing is that would be received really well because it's an innocent thing to say.
Right.
It's an innocent observation. He really does look like my grandma, which is lovely. So every time I see the Dalai Lama, I go, "Oh, that is a good
Oh,
person,
Gran.
Grandma. How you doing?" But yeah, so you're right. How can you? There
Right.
has to be some congruency, a work from both sides, a learning from both sides. I would agree with you there.
And I
And,
think that
and
this also kind of brings up what we were talking about yesterday about bullying, where it's
yeah,
like, as soon as you feel like they are different, as soon as you feel like they are doing something rather than looking at the experience that you're having,
yeah,
then all of a sudden they are, like you're not, you don't trust them.
absolutely, yeah. You're suddenly putting them in a space you're not sitting with.
Right.
You're
And
not
that doesn't
allowing
mean that,
anyone
that,
else
that,
either to make a decision.
right.
You're starting to steer people to say, "Here you are, this is a person who's mean.
Right.
They're bullying
Because they
me."
were mean to me. But it's like, no, I had the experience of having been mean too, but that doesn't mean that they're doing that.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it doesn't mean that they're doing it in with any, sort of malice.
I kind of came to the same decision as you. I think you were much more eloquent in putting it than I did, but my decision about that was to continue to shine my light. Just continue. I mean, you don't have to allow, you don't have to action this.
Yeah, I've talked to Ra
Be
Maria.
impartial.
I've talked to
Yeah,
Ra Maria about the difference between surrendering and submitting.
yeah,
Like when you're like dealing with a bully, you can surrender to the fact that they're being a bully, or I'm experiencing them as being a bully at this moment, and then protect yourself in whatever means you need to do that. But you don't have to submit to their bullying.
that's right. You don't have to action. You don't have to
Right,
change yourself. That's
right,
submission.
right. You
Yeah,
don't have to submit to this. You can just be
yeah,
like, oh, I see what's happening, and I'm going to remove myself
yeah,
from this, not from everything. And I'm not going to live as if bullying is around every corner.
absolutely.
Because I can surrender to the fact that I'm being bullied at this moment, but I don't have to surrender or submit to the fact that they are a bully,
Yeah,
or that that's all they want, because maybe there can be another interaction with this person that will be softer, that could be more, less bullying, if that's what's actually happening. I can't tell, but
yeah, which is where I mentioned signposting.
yeah. What do you mean by that?
If somebody was bullying me, I wouldn't see it as them bullying me. I would see it as them giving me a call. Notice me, please.
Yeah.
And, then I would look at that and see what was there. And then with seeing what was there, if it's a particular thing, I would say, you know, maybe you feel lonely and stuff. Isn't it time to talk to somebody about this and about these thoughts that you might be having, and, you know, get to the GP and, you know, do that. I would signpost on to, because it would be out of my remit, you see. I
Well,
don't
see,
think I'd be able to, I don't think alone I'd be able to advise, but I would
right.
signpost and move on. That's the thing about it. It's not down to me to decide, you know, who they are, why they're doing something.
And I wanna stress that you or anybody does not have to do that
Don't have to
actually,
do
like
anything, yeah.
physically. Like you don't have to do that physically, meaning that you can ask those questions of that person in your heart rather than engaging them
Yes,
in
yeah,
the,
yeah,
like you could do those things in your heart because there you are more protected. Right. So
yeah,
so if you're on a conversation with somebody and you have to remove yourself or block them or do whatever, you can still hold them close and say,
yeah.
like ask those questions. It's like, it might be time for you to get help. I send you my love,
That's right. That's
without
exactly it.
having to be in there. If you find yourself um, in a physically abusive relationship, you have to remove yourself from that relationship as safely as possible. But that doesn't mean that you have to hate that person. That person obviously is hurting and deserves love and all of these things. And when
Yeah,
you are of a sound mind, you can be impartial to their actions and love them anyway.
yeah,
Now,
absolutely.
and that doesn't mean you have to submit to their abuse or submit to their cheating or submit to their, to them being bad, but you can surrender to the fact that that's who they are at this
It
moment,
is
and
what it is.
right, and they deserve love anyway. Now, you don't have to give them love the way that they want it to be given, but you give it the way that you are best suited to at this moment, considering the danger or
Yeah,
problems in the meantime.
absolutely. Martin, John, you're amazing. Thank you very much. I
Absolutely.
do
Thank
love
you for
talking.
joining me.
I love the way that you just let me think a little bit. Every time I come in, I have an idea. Every time I leave, I have about three or four. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Oh, there is something very nice about, like, I like wisdom. I like uh I like the app. Um I love how it has expanded Tao of the Day. I love how much I have grown since I've started working with this app. I don't um, care about the app so much, but it has, it's not the app that I care about, right? It's not like, that's not what it is. But there is something about the way that this app, and because I've been on for such a long time, how I use it, right? I don't use it to argue. I don't use it to be right. I don't, like, I use it to have these conversations, and I'm grateful for those who have joined me in that journey of being able to, like, look at things in a different light. um, so many other places, like the arguments that get attention, and I'm not saying I get attention on here. I mean, hell, there's only 11 people have been on this, have listened, and when I walk away, it'll probably be only 38 minutes or whatever that have been listened to. But so it doesn't matter to me how many people are listening, because it's being said, and when it's being said, it goes out into the universe, just like holding someone in your heart and saying I love you in your heart, even though you can't be in their presence, is effective. and I feel like that's what this does. And yes, these are recorded, and so people can go back and listen to them. I don't expect a lot of people to really do that. There have been a couple people that have told me that they have listened to my recordings, and I've been grateful for that. But not grateful in a way that is, like I want that to happen. Like, well, that's nice. It's just it's nice that it's nice that someone would do that. And it feels nice that they would do that. And I realize that I want people to understand what I'm saying and understand what I'm presenting here, because once again, the Tao Te Ching, written 600 BC, there's something important about that time. That was ancient texts, right? The oldest texts are telling us about a time before that time. The Old Testament, this, all of these old, super ancient texts. And there's not many, right? There's Confucius, there's this, the Analects of Confucius, this, and only a few others. There's not too many. I mean, the Bhagavad Gita might be another ancient text. I don't know when it was written. So I can't be 100% sure on that. But there are ancient texts, like in lots of different parts of the world that that are telling us about other times. And that's what becomes really important, right? Like what becomes like so important is that we so here kind of a list. The Avesta is a primary collection of religious texts in Zoroastrianism, one of the world's oldest known religions. There's the Analects of Confucius, the Tao, the Rig Veda is an ancient collection of hymns, sacred language in Sanskrit, the Iliad and the Odyssey, and the Old Testament. Like these are like 3,000-year-old texts, pushing 3,000 years, around 3,000 years ago. So it's really important, right, to look at all of these texts and to understand what they're saying. We get the hero's journey from the Iliad and the Odyssey, along with a lot of lessons, right? The Iliad and the Odyssey are very much akin to the Bhagavad Gita, right? It's a war, and what is your role? What are the parts you play? But looking at ancient texts, what we're doing is we're looking at the oldest things written, meaning when writing became a thing, people had to learn what writing was, create writing, and do all of this kind of stuff with writing. So generations had gone by between a non-written world and a written world. But within those generations, these things had been written. Right? These things had been worked on. These are important things. And when we recognize the ancient text, what we're doing is we're reaching back to beyond a time before things were written. And that's something that we need to learn from. We need to learn from the times before we started using logic. Before we started saying, hey, A plus B is C. When we accepted things as they were. Because logic closed things off to us. Logic made us make choices. Logic only helped us measure. Because writing is a form of measuring. It's like I say something, well, now I'm going to write it down. Now I have a measure of what you had said. I have a document that's saying this is what you said. And now today, after you said this, and that's a change from yesterday and today. And we're seeing that change. We're able to measure it if we check. Just like someone asked me, what's the difference? Like how's my arm feel? Well, I'm not checking it. Why should I? It feels as it feels. And I feel fine with it. Now, if I examine it and look at it and measure it, then I'll say, oh, it's more than it was yesterday. It's less than it was yesterday. And then I'll have anxiety around that. No reason to do that. No reason to measure. It's all okay, just as it is. And I can find fulfillment here in this moment. All right. I want to thank you guys so much for joining me. I appreciate your time and attention. If you guys benefit from the work I do here on Tao of the Day or Wisdom App, you can send me a tip over at Venmo at @MartinJohn_Garcia. We don't have a word in English for that @ sign, I don't think. But in Spanish it's arroba. And if you want to use that little sign and then MartinJohn_Garcia, you'll find me and you can send me a tip. And I would greatly appreciate that. Thank you so much for your time, patience, and understanding and attention. So until next time, keep recovering yourself.